If you're in your 40s and 50s, but you haven't yet found effective ways to treat and fully overcome your chronic insomnia, then you're in the right place. We're going to talk about the three main treatment paths that I often actually combine depending on the complexity of a client's sleep situation. These three treatment paths are the medical route, the therapy route, and the coaching or training route. And the reason I often combine the three is because depending on what situation you have with your sleep, you might need components from all three treatment paths so that we can really build that picture and those puzzle pieces that's really going to be effective for whatever your sleep situation is. My name is Beatrix, and after overcoming my insomnia, I've been working with clients in my sleep coaching practice for 10 years. So, first of all, I know how it feels to struggle with insomnia because I've been through it. I've been through it in my 20s, but also now that I'm in my 40s, I know how to keep my sleep in a good place. But when it comes to clients, general things often don't really help a client fully overcome their more complex and chronic insomnia. And I'm sure you've seen that as well, because if you've done any research on sleep or insomnia and you tried and tested lots of different things, you already know that those simple things are not effective. If overcoming chronic insomnia was that simple, millions of people across the world wouldn't struggle for many months or even years. So, what we've really got to look at is helping you to figure out what might be the missing gap between what you have put in place and why it might not have worked for you. Now, obviously, I haven't met you, so I'm only going to be able to give you guidance based on what I see in my practice. And this is where very first thing I always say to clients is you've got to make sure you don't self-diagnose. Sleep situations, chronic insomnia is very complex a lot of the times, especially in the 40s and 50s. So let's make sure that you're not preventing yourself from overcoming it through a diagnosis, a self-diagnosis that is not applicable for you. So when we look at the three different treatment paths and how you would even figure out which way to go, depending already what you have tried, what you might have already put in place, we got to look at the three main factor groups that affect our ability to either be able to sleep well or struggle with insomnia. So you might have heard about the Spielman model. I'm not going to talk about it too much. There is a separate video that goes into all the different factors in more detail, so I'll link that for you. But just to touch on the main three factors, because that's really going to help you to figure out which treatment path might be a better way forward. The important thing to know about these three main factor groups is every person will have a different combination of them. Every person will have different behaviors, different ways that they respond to these factors depending on who they are. But let's go through the main factors so you can really start seeing how they may play a role in your inability to be able to overcome your chronic insomnia. So the first one is predisposing factors. These can be biological, social, or psychological changes that you are going through in your 40s and 50s. Medical conditions can be part of these changes as well. Then we've got precipitating factors. These are more trigger-like. So if an event happens, then you're going to respond to that event based on who you are as a person. You might have certain health scares that actually are very personal to you, and the way you deal with them are going to be different to someone else. So these are just some of those examples. Then we've got perpetuating factors, and a lot of the times this is the biggest factor group that plays a role in your inability to be able to overcome your chronic insomnia, because these are based on the way you behave differently once you start to struggle. So this is where you start researching on sleep and putting tips and advice and changes in place with the hope of overcoming the challenges you have. So a lot of the times, if things don't deliver, you continue to be sort of more and more nervous about how your sleep might be like. So that's where it's very common for these last factors to play a bigger role the longer the chronic insomnia has been around. So depending on what factor group you're seeing, you're going to see how differently these treatment paths might work for you and what combination you might need. So if you have more of a medical condition or a health scare, you might actually want to start with the medical route first, because once you actually figure out what might be changing physically and what might be influencing your sleep in a physical way, then you can actually really have that medical treatment in place so that you no longer struggle with that part of your biological sleep. Then we've got the therapy route. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is one of the most recommended treatment plans. Now, in my practice, I integrate it, but not in its official 6-session format. Now, if you want to look at what that therapy route is, then I've got a range of videos on just the cognitive behavioral therapy approach. So you can check that out and go through each video step by step, because that's more of a process as you might go through the treatment. And then we look at the coaching or training route, which is very much what I do in my practice, either on a one-to-one basis or a group sleep coaching basis. And the way I've seen sleep coaching work for clients is because it really gives me the opportunity to put in place whatever a client needs depending on their situation. And you can already see why I might combine all three of these things. Every single person is different, so we want to make sure that whatever we put in place is applicable to the person and all those challenges that might be actually influencing their ability or inability to sleep well. So when we look at the coaching route, behavioral change doesn't have to be a therapy-based change. If you put in place different things and you really train the body and the mind in order to be able to sleep well, you're naturally going to be changing behavior anyway. You're going to be changing the way your mind thinks. You're going to be changing the way your body behaves. So this is why I found that if there is no medical conditions or underlying medical issues, and there's no psychological issues that might require therapy, the sleep coaching route is actually incredibly effective, because it's very much based on making those practical changes that will lead to your ability to be able to create great quality sleep for many years to come. And what I do in my sleep coaching practice is train specific skill sets. So sleep skills for life. Now, if you don't know which way to move forward, often what that already shows us is that the basic sleep skill of being self-aware and understanding how your sleep works or doesn't work well is missing. I'm not saying that you're not intelligent enough to know that, but a lot of the times what I've seen with clients is through the effort of overcoming their insomnia, they become more and more confused about what might work for them. And if all the things you put in place haven't worked for you, then that shows us that you might not even know where to look anymore. So confusion and not knowing what might work is a very big part of a lot of the times in my client work as well. If you knew how to overcome your insomnia, you would have done it by now. But a lot of the general advice online can actually mislead you into different places and not really help you to really solve the problem that you have and overcome the chronic insomnia challenges and situations that you have. So in the next video, what we're going to talk about is how to actually become more self-aware of what your sleep is showing you. And those are all the things that you can build on. So often people ask for secrets, tools, techniques, so that they can really start making a difference in their sleep. But the reality is that I'm no magician. So all the things that your sleep is already showing you are the things that you can use. But if you're not sure what you're looking for, or you're not able to see what your sleep is showing you, then obviously you can't build on those things. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, is really what kind of questions you can ask yourself and how you can really get to know your sleep, and therefore your own sleep secrets that are already there that you can then use to really build that plan to overcome your chronic insomnia in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for watching. If this video has provided you value, then you know exactly what to do. Hit that like button below, and even come into the comments and let me know how differently you see this in your situation, or any questions that you might have.